Guess I should have known by the way you parked your car sideways that it wouldn't last. You see, you're the kind of person that believes in making out once, love them and leave them fast. I guess I must be dumb. She had a pocket full of horses, Trojan and some of them used.
That's the song from Purple Rain. Came out in 1984. Is considered one of the most important albums in the history of music. Of course, that's Prince. Prince died a year ago, and Alan Light has written a brand new book called Let's Go Crazy. Alan Light, former writer for Rolling Stone. Good morning, Alan. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning. Thanks for having me on.
Explain to people who don't get it, why was that album so influential?
Well, the easiest answer is that Purple Rain was the first time ever that anybody simultaneously had the #1 single, album, and movie in the United States. It was unprecedented to have that kind of success with music and film. You can maybe look at the Beatles doing Hard Day's Night as the only other precedent for something like that. And Prince was, still, I don't want to say relatively obscure before Purple Rain, but was not a superstar. And almost overnight, that movie and the songs on the soundtrack catapulted him to becoming one of the biggest stars in the world. It's just it was a phenomenon that pop music really hadn't seen before or since.
The book is called Let's Go Crazy. He was known as clean living and doing things right, and when he died, people mourned for days, and they were convinced that when the word came out that he would not have died of some type of drug overdose. Turned out he did exactly that.
Well, it's terrible. I mean, it's some of us are still mourning and still trying to make sense out of it. This was someone who was always very outspoken about no recreational drug use or any kind of substance use, not just for himself, but for his band or everyone who worked for him. What we didn't know or didn't appreciate was the physical pain that this guy was in. And when you go back and you watch not just Purple Rain, but you watch all the footage of him on stage, and you see him jumping off of speaker stacks in heels, landing, going into a spin and a split, we were all just amazed at what he could do, but never thought about the physical toll that was taking on his body, night in and night out, giving that much of himself as a dancer and as a performer. And clearly there was a point where he needed hip surgery. He delayed getting that, and somewhere in there presumably started self-medicating for that pain, and it's what led to this tragedy.
The stories are that the prescription pain pills that were found were not his.
Well, that investigation is still ongoing, whether things were being prescribed under other people's names, other people who worked for him, what the sources of the pills that he was getting, what the actual prescriptions were. I mean, it's a year later, and everybody's still trying to figure out exactly what it was that happened. And on the one hand, of course, we want to know, and it matters, and there may be charges to pursue. But on the other hand, it doesn't change the fact that at 57 years old, he was gone way, way, way too soon.
And Alan, Prince died without a will, correct?
Not as far. Nobody's been able to find anything so far. Whether there's something hidden or buried or in a that hasn't turned up. But as far as we know, there was no will in place, and everybody's still trying to make sense of how to proceed with the estate. At the financial level, the bank administrator has changed over recently. The creative consultant advisory team has changed over, and it really still feels like we're starting from zero to figure out what happens to all the unreleased music and the rest of the estate.
How much money are we talking about?
Well, it's hundreds of millions of dollars. It depends what you're talking about. The Paisley Park compound and studio and grounds and everything that's there. There's all of the what we know of the released music and the catalog, and then everything that hasn't been released and what's actually there and what the market for that will be. You know, unfortunately, every day that this drags on, it gets harder. You know, it loses. It's a harder fight.
Yeah, there's also
to move it forward.
Future royalties too, right? Who's going to own that going forward?
Who's going to make decisions about how new music will be released and what that will be, and who's going to approve the documentary and the life story and everything moving forward? You know, you just hope that it happens soon enough that it's still while people care as passionately about him. You know, the longer that you wait, the more that you risk people forgetting that this guy was the towering musical genius of his generation.
Doesn't he have at least one sibling who is taking over?
Well, there's one full sibling and 5 half siblings, and in the eyes of Minnesota state law, they all have an equal voice at the table. So there's 6 of them with different relationships to him, some with, you know, really no relationship with him at all. And even if they're playing nice, just try to imagine, you know, no will, no direction, 6 people, different people with different viewpoints, all trying to sit down and hash this out. I mean, that's complicated even when you're talking about a simpler estate and much lower stakes than what you're dealing with here. It's just a mess, and it's going to take a long time.
Alan Light, our guest for another minute or two. The book is Let's Go Crazy. How long was he addicted to painkillers? Do we have any idea?
I don't think we have any idea. I mean, it was early in the 2000s when you started seeing him, you know, walking with a limp and with a cane, and the rumors were going around that he needed the hip replacements. And then at some point a couple of years later, obviously, he got that done because he was moving better. But I think, you know, who knows what happened. If you're making up the story in your head, somewhere in there, you know, would make sense as the time that he would have had to start dealing with this pain, and that's probably where all of this starts.
And was he against the surgery because of his religion?
That's the story, was that because of his Jehovah's Witness faith, he, you know, was trying to avoid the surgery and issues around blood transfusions and things like that. Again, we're not going to know, but there was clearly a need for a surgery that he delayed, and again, most logically, that's what starts down the path that leads to his end.
Alan Light, what did you think of Bruno Mars' tribute to Prince during the Emmys a couple weeks ago?
That one was at the Grammys. Listen, I think Bruno did a fine job, but I think you can't compete. You know, the best you're going to do is remind everybody, oh, right, Prince could do all of those things. He could still sing and dance and play guitar better than anybody else could. So, you know, Bruno did a fine job. I think he's great, but he's still no Prince.
Let's Go Crazy. That's the book. Alan Light, former writer for Rolling Stone, has the book out 1 year after his death. Alan, good luck with the book. Thanks for checking in.
Thank you so much. Have a good day.
727 KTRS.
Only